Well, Vikings fans, my wife saw how mad you were at me last week. She bought me this shirt and said, if the Vikings beat the Packers, you got to wear this and put them number one in the rankings next week. We'll see about ranking them number one here later in the video, but here we are. And what a week 4 of action it was. A lot of movement this week. I'm really excited for today's rankings. I feel like a month of football, 4 games behind us now, starting to get a much better feel for who these teams are and how they project moving forward. Before we do get started though, if you could take just a second to hit that like button, it really does help me out. I really appreciate it. I also want to remind you, this is more of the Spark Notes reactions, if you will, to week 4. If you enjoy my analysis and you want more thorough breakdowns of these games, I have my weekly recap episodes every week on the Fully Inflated Football podcast. Click the link down below to follow that, or just search Fully Inflated wherever you get your audio shows. But without further ado, let's get started. In our bottom tier, the currently unserious tier, and staying at the very bottom, it aged well to rank the Dolphins at the very bottom. This team is unwatchable without Tua. You thought Tyler Huntley would be able to come in and make this machine run a little bit better, but no, without the timing that Tua brings to the table, his ability to get the ball out quick within the rhythm of this offense to protect that quarterback from what is a pretty bad offensive line, this is an unwatchable football team, and the defense just can't hang being on the field this much. So at least until Tua comes back, this is the worst team in football. Then I have the New England Patriots at number 31, getting decimated by the 49ers, really starting to look, unfortunately, like the team we feared they would be coming into the year. Offense can't move the ball, defense is getting tired, you name it. Then at number 30, the Carolina Panthers, while they are a much more watchable product with Andy Dalton and this offense playing very well, man, this defense can't get a stop, and things only get worse as Shaq Thompson now down for the season. I think with how J.C. Horn is playing this year, you can say now they're 2 best defensive players on injured reserve for the year. Even if Andy Dalton's getting this offense to play better, is that a unit that's going to win a bunch of shootouts? No, I don't think so. So staying put at 30 for Carolina. Then the Tennessee Titans at number 29. I will say it is great to see them get a win, their first win under this new regime with Callahan. Did I walk away particularly impressed by the Titans and an ugly, sloppy battle of backup quarterbacks between Mason Rudolph and Tyler Huntley with how the Dolphins have looked as we just described? No, not necessarily, but hopefully this can, get the monkey off their back a little bit, build off it a little bit, and, see if they can get Will Levis back into the lineup sooner rather than later, and again, maybe build something off this win. Then the New York Giants at number 28. Just feels like they're treading water here, unfortunately. Daniel Jones, same old, can't hit the deep ball, super timid. Love seeing him get Malik Neighbors going. They're hanging around, but just can't take this team all too seriously right now. Sorry, Giants fans. Then the last team in this tier, the definition of currently unserious, the Cleveland Browns. And you know it's bad when Deshaun Watson actually has a half-decent game, and then everybody else lets him down. Not that Watson was great or anything. He still takes a sack on the last play of the game where they're, trying to beat the Raiders, holding on to the ball, doing same old Deshaun Watson stuff. But in this game, man, drops, offensive line issues. Even this defense hasn't been the world beaters that they were last season. That's a huge concern. Back-to-back losses for Cleveland now against the Giants and the Raiders. Ouch. Definitely deserving of this bottom tier here. And that will round out our bottom tier. But before we jump up to the Frisky tier in these rankings, this video is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. As quarterbacks go down and some of these teams are emerging as real stinkers, the only way to really get you through a game like we just watched in the Dolphins-Titans game is a good old Underdog pick'em slip. Load up your lineup, selecting player stats higher or lower, string together your favorite picks, You can throw them into low-level entries, anything from $2, $3, with the chance for massive payouts, over 20 times your entry if you win. You'll be sticking it out to see how many times Tyler Huntley gets sacked or how many times he's going to overthrow Tyreek Hill, picking his under on receiving yards. Underdog is here to maximize your interest in any given football game. It doesn't have to be a crappy one either. You can load up all the games on your Sunday slate, as I certainly do myself. And right now, if you sign up using promo code TFG or scan that QR code on the screen, they will give you a bonus match up to $1,000, and you will support my channel in the process. But with that, let's jump up to our next tier here, an oldie but a goodie in this series, the Frisky tier. Not good teams, but teams that are a tough out any given game. And I think that does describe the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a very frustrating, weird team, but they have a frisky offense with their run game, Brock Bowers. They got to get Devontae back into the lineup. And they got to get Max Crosby back in the lineup too. This defense has not been what they were hoping it would be coming into the year. But hey, Tyree Wilson has the best game of his career, 5 pressures against the Browns. Could that lead to something? We'll see. Isaiah Palamau flying around making plays. We're looking for something to get excited for with the Raiders. So a couple of young guys standing out in that win against the Browns. They climbed to 2-2. But then at number 25, I'm going to hold on to the Jags here, even if they are the only winless team in the league. Look, they were in Houston with the lead in control for 3/4 of this game. I still don't look at the Jags, who have had a very difficult schedule this season, as this bottom tier football team. Now, they obviously rank very lowly here, and if they lose to the Colts this week, I probably would fire Doug Peterson. But to the defense's credit, the D-line woke up this week. That is very encouraging. The passing game was much better, but even in that, you had Trevor Lawrence missing 2 wide-ass open touchdown throws that he simply needs to hit to get this team season back on track. And it was, of course, frustrating to see them unable to punch the ball in at the goal line in the fourth quarter, unable to put this game away with the ball on the ground, as they've continuously shown they can't do. So again, this team obviously has issues. I'm ranking them 25th, but you'll probably see some rankings because they're the only team that hasn't won a game, putting them 32, 31, 30. If they played any of those teams in that bottom tier and the Raiders, I would still favor the Jags to get their first win on the season. But then at number 24, the LA Chargers, they fall to 2-2, a frustrating loss against the Chiefs. They actually played way harder than I expected they would, but the gas, they ran out of gas in this one. A tough team to really know what to do with. Their 2 wins coming against the Raiders and the Panthers. They've lost their last 2 and have been so injured. Coming out of the bye week after this week, it's coming at a very good time. I have liked what I've seen from the overall, Harbaugh regime in their first month, and I think they can continue to build, but obviously not the most potent team in the league at the moment. And then the Arizona Cardinals are going to fall down 6 spots this week, down into the Frisky tier. A real fall from grace after that, 40-point victory against the Rams. Kyler has not been sharp. He's missed some throws that he was not missing in the first couple of weeks. But even more so, this defense is just brutal, man. Really didn't like their game plan this week. They just didn't blitz Jaden Daniels at all. They felt like they could win with 4, and that proved to be a horrible mistake. They just don't have the dudes on that side of the ball. And man, if you're not getting a fun game plan from Jonathan Gannon, as I think he's shown in some games in the past, all this team really has is the scheme. So a rough week. They got to find some answers on both sides of the ball. Then I am going to have the LA Rams. Yes, ahead of the Cardinals. Head-to-head's not everything. I think the Rams are playing slightly better football than Arizona right now. The defense continues to be frisky. Jared Verse is a beast. Kobe Turner playing well. Rookie Braden Fisk making some splash plays in there. And Matthew Stafford's going to keep you around, but this is a very spotty team right now. I just don't overall trust their trench play, their secondary, their linebackers getting picked on big time against DeAndre Swift and the Bears. And I probably jumped the gun a little bit on this Rams team, suiting them back up when they kind of snuck in the back door and beat the Niners a week ago. This team still has a lot of issues. But the season's not over either. Hopefully they can get healthy and climb back up these rankings within a couple of weeks, but I don't think that's going to start this week. Then the Bears are going to be at 21 after beating the Rams. Definitely Caleb's best game. DeAndre Swift with a watch this performance. Hey, tip of the cap, man. He looked horrible. Really questioned that signing. Still kind of do, but man, it's really good to see the explosiveness, and him having a game like that provides some juice to a Bears offense that really has needed it. You do see what having a run game can do for a young quarterback in Caleb Williams, just the pressure taken off of him much more, and the defense continuing to do their thing. You know, some of these ancillary pass rushers are starting to contribute for this defense. Darrell Taylor's been a nice signing by Ryan Poles. Gervon Dexter in year 2 continues to have impact plays once or twice or 3 times a game, and they're a very balanced football team right now. Don't view them as dominant on either side of the ball, but heading in the right direction in Chicago. And then the Indianapolis Colts at number 20. Honestly, there's obviously a lot to talk about with the quarterback room, but a big thing here is they have resolved their run defense issues, which in the first 2 weeks were hysterically bad. They get their second win in a row, beating the Steelers. And then you have the whole quarterback situation. You know, I think Flacco does bring them a higher floor right now. He stepped in and looked pretty composed and methodical. Kind of different, honestly, than Cleveland Joe Flacco, where he was out there just slinging it. You know, he was out there, taking advantage of the good offensive line that Indy has, finding Josh Downs underneath, making some nice throws. I still think you want Richardson back and continue to build that because he's the future. You got to get him in there and continue that development. But he took a couple nasty hits in this game and had to leave. We'll see how long he's going to be out. But the point I'm making is this team's going to be competitive with Joe Flacco. They have a great offensive line. Jonathan Taylor now for the 3rd week in a row looks all the way back to that guy that they paid all that money. Great offensive line again. They can run the hell out of the football even without Anthony Richardson. So Colts got some good stuff going on right now. And then to wrap up the Frisky tier, the Denver Broncos jumping 7 spots, our highest riser this week. You know, in the first 2 weeks, it was glossed over by myself and I think most people, really how well the defense was playing early in the season as Bo Nix was busy throwing the ball to the other team. But the last 2 weeks, as Bo Nix has taken better care of the football, I know he was getting a lot of crap for his stats in this game, and I'm not going to say he was great. Really bad weather against a great Jets defense. But without all those ugly moments from Bo Nix, you're getting to see this defense shine through and really carry this team to victories. They were awesome against the Bucs last week and shut down against the Jets. It's all coming together here, and what a difference from Vance Joseph's start last year where they were calling for his job. A historically bad start for the Broncos defense and a really impressive job by Vance Joseph last year to make some tweaks and changes to straighten that defense out. It's a big reason why the Broncos did win like 7 games last year. But thank God they didn't fire him because he is up there in terms of just defensive mastermind performances this year. Been really impressed by his ability to blitz, but then to kind of pull it back and cause some of that confusion, kind of like a turned down version of what we're seeing in Minnesota with Brian Flores a little bit, but just getting very creative schematically. And then the players are stepping up too. This secondary has quietly been one of the best, if not the best in the league through the first month of the year. Pat Surtain has been shutting top receivers down. Riley Moss is breaking out in year 2 out of Iowa. And they have one of the best slot corners in the league, too, in Jaquan McMillan. So a ton of credit to that secondary. Hell, even Brandon Jones, which was a signing I really questioned, did not like his tape in Miami. He's been a very good safety for them. So the secondary is stepping up behind all these blitzes, and they have all these really fun chess pieces up front for Vance Joseph. Zach Allen's playing great. You got athletes out there like Nick Bonito, John Franklin Myers. Just so impressed by this defense. And of course, the offense is having their struggles. That's why I don't put them in the next tier here. I need to see more from them on that side of the ball with better weather opportunities. But just so impressed by this Broncos defense, and they deserve all the credit here. Again, the biggest risers this week. But now we will jump up to our third tier. These, to me, are fringe playoff caliber teams, imperfect teams, but teams that are certainly not easy outs and are kind of vying for wild card positioning here heading into the second month of the season. This is probably going to be the most controversial ranking this week. I'm going to reveal these two together. I have Atlanta at 18 and New Orleans at 17. And you can critique this if you want and say, well, if they're right next to each other, you should put the team that just beat the other ahead of them. And that's totally fair. But if I'm trying to be honest about who the better teams are moving into the next week, I don't think the Falcons are better than the Saints. The Saints have been way more convincing in their victories, whereas the Falcons have escaped by the skin of their teeth. And even in this game, I mean, New Orleans had more first downs, more total yards, you name it. They felt like the better team in Atlanta. It's just you have a muff punt by Rashid Shaheed. Matthew Judon tips a ball up in the air that gets pick-sixed. And Younghoe Koo hits a 58-yarder for the win after the Falcons offense didn't score a touchdown all day. I'm not saying it was a bad win for the Falcons. They needed it. They get to 2-2 and a huge win over a divisional opponent. But if I'm being honest, I think the Saints are better on offense and defense, maybe not special teams. And if there was just one team in between these two teams, I don't think anybody would complain about it. They just happen to land side by side as Atlanta's climbing up and New Orleans is going down. So you guys will have to let me know what you think about those rankings. But I want to give these teams a little more individual dues as well. As for Atlanta, while I just trashed you guys, I have been impressed by how scrappy this defense is, even though they really don't have any semblance of a pass rush. And the offense does feel like week by week they're figuring things out. They actually got Drake London going, I feel like, on some of those throws that he's so good at, those in-breakers, which I felt like would have been there from the very get-go, because that was like Kirk's money throw, where those, play action, turn your head around, hit those intermediate digs. Doesn't feel like they've been there, but they were this week with Drake London. Darnell Mooney is actually playing really well. A lot of frustrations, obviously, that Kyle Pitts isn't getting involved. But hey, if he's not making plays, then you don't need to force feed him the ball, and they're not doing that. So, they're finding ways to win while they figure themselves out. They're balanced on both sides of the ball, but just, again, not very potent on either side of the ball, and definitely escaped really thanks to a brutal punt touchdown allowed by Rashid Shaheed that really had nothing to do with the Falcons. And that takes us to the Saints. I mean, he tries to fair catch it on the 2-yard line for some reason. Just let that thing bounce and just coughs it up into the end zone. It's not like there was sun in his face or anything. Just a horrible mistake that was easily the difference in this game. And then a really unfortunate bounce off the deflection from Judon as well. I think Carr was fine. The run game was better. Alvin Kamara looks really good to me. Taysom Hill is unironically a very good running back. And I think their play calling just makes way more sense when he's in there, because they kind of set everything up based on what they can do with him and all the different alignments. So the offense was working. I trust this defense as well. I know I'm talking them up, but they are falling down 6 spots. I probably had them ranked a little too high last week after a quote-unquote good loss to the Eagles that right now doesn't feel like as much of a good loss after what we saw the Eagles look like this week. But I know things don't feel great for the Saints fans after they started with that incredible 2-0 start, but I do still think they're a pretty good football team overall. But then at number 16, the Cincinnati Bengals kind of get that monkey off their back. They get a win, even if it was in Carolina. But the way it happened, I think you feel pretty damn good. Yes, again, the Panthers defense, but Joe Burrow just so locked in. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, really kind of doing it all. Methodical plays, in structure, getting some of those explosive plays. What a touchdown that was from Jamar Chase, just brushing off Panthers defenders like flies. And Burrow getting into some of the play extension stuff that they needed too. +3 as some of the teams ranked ahead of them were losing this week. It's not going to be a massive bump up for the Bengals, but I do think you can feel pretty good that they can keep this thing going, at least offensively. Trey Hendrickson seems to have avoided a major injury. That's a huge deal because he's their only semblance of a pass rusher, but he's one of the best pass rushers in the league this year. So great to get him not out for the year, if that makes sense. But yeah, good week for the Bengals. Huge test coming up with them hosting the Ravens here on Sunday. Then the Washington Commanders at 15. This offense just absolutely cooking. Jaden Daniels seems to have all of the answers right now. Breaks the NFL record for completion percentage in the first 4 starts of his career. Not the record for the first 4 starts of a player's career, just the record for NFL completion percentage within 4 games. Jaden Daniels just happened to do that in the first 4 games of his career. He did finally make one mistake this week, but that was really it. I mean, I'm just so impressed by his ability to attack the middle of the field, the processing, the decision-making, the accuracy, and the pocket presence. You know, Arizona, I didn't love their game plan. They dropped into, an 8-man coverage. They rushed 3 players on a 4th of their passing downs. I think, getting after it and blitzing would have been a better approach, but to Jaden Daniels' credit, a lot of times when teams do that, quarterbacks that can't detect the blitz or sense the rush or have good pocket presence, especially when they're athletes, they'll just bail out of clean pockets and not take advantage of those 3-man rush looks. And Daniels is like, fine, you're going to send 3. I'll just sit here and wait until someone gets open and pick you apart. And I think that comes down to his awareness and his pocket presence. So just a great week from him. The run game cooking. I mean, everything's working when Jeremy McNichols looks like a superstar running back for you. And hell, even the defense made some plays with guys in the intermediate of that defense. Jeremy Chin showing up, Frankie Louvu, a big punch out forced fumble to kind of put the final dagger away in this game. Bobby Wagner helping out against the run. So I do like that part of the defense. But the rest of it, I still don't really trust, to be honest. Either way, another good week for the Commanders, who jumped to 3-1 and are very much in the playoff mix. And man, if their division can't get their act together, that could get interesting too. Overall, the continuation of the narrative is kind of the Commanders are the 2023 Texans. Well, that certainly didn't stop this week, that's for sure. But then I do have the Pittsburgh Steelers rounding out this tier at number 14. It's going to move them down a spot in the rankings, but have my thoughts about the Steelers really changed? No. I do think the defense will have better days ahead of them. It's tough to hold teams under 20 points every single week, especially when Jonathan Taylor's lighting you up and the offensive line you're going against is damn good. I do think the Colts were able to pick on the weaknesses in the Steelers secondary at slot corner and at linebacker, and you felt that. And the offense, Fields got a lot of praise this week. He had a great second half in this game and kind of brought them back into the game, but they started really slow. It was a different game script than we've seen from the first 3 weeks on the Steelers, but you still felt some of those inconsistencies there. So I don't feel that different about the Steelers this week, and it's going to be tough all year to feel all that different about the Steelers, where, every week it feels like they're going to be within a score, and then it's just a matter of how the coin lands that week. And with that, it almost felt like they were due for a loss, and certainly not a huge surprise to see them fall to 3-1. Still having a pretty good year altogether, though, and fun to see Fields kind of continue to stack overall good performances despite the slow start. But now we are going to jump up a tier. These are teams that, to me, do have just an overall completeness and higher upside about them than anybody we've talked about right to this point. And I am actually going to start with the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this is a team that I still don't know entirely what to do with. They've had a very volatile start to their season. Very easy schedule to start where the defense looked great. And then they finally have a hard game and their entire defensive line seemingly out of nowhere is unavailable. I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow. I couldn't believe when I saw the injury report. No Byron Murphy in the week where Detroit's center was down. Like, I was excited to see Byron Murphy maybe pick on a backup center. They didn't get that. Leonard Williams was also out, who's been good. And Boye Mafe, who's been their best pass rusher, was out. That's just tough to overcome. So at least on the defensive side of the ball, it's like, well, they've either beat up on horrible quarterbacks or are giving up 40-plus points to Jared Goff without their defensive line. Very hard to know how things are going to settle in on that side of the ball. But what I do know is that Geno Smith is effing balling out right now. Probably quietly, like balling out, not getting enough credit for it. I mean, pretty safely playing like a top 5 quarterback this season. And his defense getting lit up kind of put to waste a very good Geno Smith outing again. I mean, his connection with DK Metcalf has been special. His comfort within the offense, his pocket presence, his play extension, he's not really putting the ball in harm's way. His arm talent, super underrated. The accuracy, phenomenal. And he's doing it, yes, with some really great weapons, but with an offensive line that has certainly struggled this year. So if the defense can get healthy and sort some things out, I actually am walking away more impressed by the Seahawks. And I think you look at some of those injuries with Mike McDonald and with a unit that, has played 4 games together under the new coach. Like, if they can just get a little bit more from that defense against better teams, not really worried about the Seahawks losing in Detroit on a night where they were firing on all cylinders. And the Seahawks actually go up a spot this week. But then the Green Bay Packers at number 12, falling down 3 spots this week after a very sloppy loss to the Vikings that really wasn't as close as the final score indicated. But I do think, like the Seahawks, the Packers are a team that are actually like low-key very hard to know what to do with and who they're going to be moving forward. Obviously, a lot of expectations coming into the year, but you have Week 1, a tough game to kind of evaluate in Brazil on a bit of an ice rink of a football field. Then weeks 2 and 3, they have dominant wins against lesser football teams. And then this Week 4 game against the Vikings, just an avalanche of unacceptable but correctable mistakes earlier in this game. You've got multiple drops, a pair of missed field goals, Love's second interception, where he's targeting an open Romeo Doubs in the second level, but his 6'6" tight end, who's on a stop route underneath, jumps way up 10 feet in the air, tips the ball up, it gets picked, brought back to the goal line. A play later, it's 28-0 Vikings. You also have the fact that Jair Alexander, really out of nowhere, doesn't play in this game. You got Randy Moss in the ESPN pregame saying he can't wait for the Jair Justin Jefferson matchup, and then it's like, boom, he's gone. That clearly hurt their defense and gave them a huge matchup disadvantage in this game, and you expect him back very soon. And the Packers made some adjustments. Love actually got better as the game went on. I actually like some of the stuff he did, feel out these Brian Flores rushes, attack cover 2, made some big throws in this game while also simultaneously being wildly inaccurate in his first game back as he recovers from this knee injury. So just a very volatile Packers team right now that I think we're going to need to continue to learn more about as the season goes on. Obviously hasn't been all bad. I think you feel pretty good about Matt LaFleur and the talent this team has to kind of straighten some things out. But we'll see. Ironically, the Packers, after all this, are kind of right back to where I had them ranked heading into the year. Curious to see where you guys think Green Bay should be ranked. I think they're one of the harder ones to look at this week. Then Dallas at number 11, taking care of business against the Giants. I still don't feel great about this team. So many injuries in the secondary. Don't love that. Offense has been fine. The lack of a run game and explosive options not named CeeDee Lamb clearly kind of just reduces the ceiling on this team. But, still a balanced playoff contender with some superstar pieces, right? But then the Eagles at number 10, falling down 6 spots this week. Look, I'll come out and say it. The Eagles have a Jalen Hurts problem. And I understand. No A.J. Brown, no Devonta Smith in this game. He will probably turn around and play a little bit better than he's been playing right now because it's probably impossible for him to play worse. I think there's a few quarterbacks in the league that have had worse starts to their season than Jalen Hurts, but not a lot. He has genuinely been a bottom 5 quarterback in the league, leads the league in turnover-worthy plays, by the way, but it's not just that. It's wildly inaccurate throws. He's proving yet again he has no idea how to handle the blitz. Todd Bowles made a mockery of him in this game. And I would say his pocket presence, his ability to feel the rush, knowing when and how to use his feet, which is supposed to be a part of his game, is the worst in the NFL. This dude has no idea where the rush is coming from and how to manage it to make plays, or just to avoid getting sack fumbled. It's like worse than Daniel Jones, and that's saying a lot. And I get it. No A.J. Brown, no Devonta Smith. It is not making things easier on him. But you also shouldn't look like a absolute backup quarterback when you don't have those guys. And it wasn't just this week. I hated what we saw from him in New Orleans. Thought he was horrible against the Packers week 1. Didn't even really do much against the Falcons week 2. In what was his best game on the year. This is your franchise quarterback, and I'm not sure he's a better answer than Kenny Pickett, their backup right now. And I am 100% serious about that. He has been horrible. And I overrated the Eagles last week thinking this was going to get better. It hasn't. His skill set is not a fit with Kellen Moore's pro-style offense. He clearly is missing Shane Steichen's RPO, one read and run high school offense, because without it, he's playing really, really poorly. And something happened. He is not as athletic as he once was, and that's hurting him too. If he's not going to be a big impact in the run game, we're seeing what he is as a pocket passing quarterback. And again, it is one of the 5 worst throwers of the football in the league right now. And you look at that contract, that might be a bigger problem than the fact that they have a deadbeat head coach in Nick Sirianni. Things are not looking good in Philadelphia. And I didn't like their defensive game plan either. It felt like Vic Fangio just did his classic Fangio thing where he's just going to play, quarters all game, play off, bend, don't break defense. Well, they bended and broke against the Bucs. Just a horrible, horrible outing for the Eagles. Still cracking the top 10 off of hopes that Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown come back, and the fact that this team does have roster talent to celebrate. But this could turn into a free fall, just as we saw at the end of last season. Going to be an interesting to monitor, I think, over the next couple of weeks. The best thing you can say about the Eagles is no team needs a week 5 bye more than them right now. But then the Jets at number 9, they're going to fall down 3 spots. Definitely a pump the brakes moment this week against the Broncos. I don't think you panic in a just horrible conditions game like this against what has proved to be an underrated Broncos defense. And if you're looking for a positive takeaway, the Jets defense has actually been much closer to what they were advertised coming out, and I think that's a very big deal. But obviously they just need more from this offense. They don't need a ton more, but they need more than 9 points. And it was a really slow start. People are going to point the fingers at Rodgers. I don't think he came out sharp and prepared, and he contributed to this kind of sluggish day for the offense. But he did settle in, still made plays with his feet. He actually made 3 or 4 really impressive throws in this game. But 10 penalties on the offense. They just kept going backwards. And frankly, we don't talk about running back performance shattering a team's day offensively. But this was genuinely an all-time stinker of a running back game from Breece Hall. Not only did he magically only have 4 yards on 10 carries, in which he looked very sluggish, stiff, non-committal, just uncharacteristic to Breece Hall. He did not show any juice at all. Braylon Allen looked significantly more explosive, and it's not like Braylon Allen is a super explosive back. Very sluggish day from Breece, but not just carrying the ball. He had a critical drop that killed a drive. He has 2 false starts in this game. And most of all, a very bad moment in pass protection on a 4th down when the Jets are trying to salvage this game. Rodgers is a wide open receiver over the middle of the field against a big blitz from Vance Joseph. Breece Hall steps in the wrong direction. Unblocked defensive back sacks Rodgers before they can get the throw off. Certainly not the player that you expect to be hurting your offense so much. Very interested to see what they do there. Is he hurt? Can they get more from him? I mean, they need Breece Hall, right? He's their second best player, but not if he's playing like this. So that's going to be something to monitor. Again, I don't think you panic on a day where the defense did play great. The conditions sucked, and they had a lot of mental mistakes, but obviously a lot to clean up. And they need just a little bit more juice in this offense, whether it's Breece Hall stepping up, continuing to get more and more from Mike Williams, where that dial's getting turned up a little bit more. And also, Garrett Wilson drew Pat Surtain in this game. He's not going to have to deal with that every single week. But then Tampa Bay at number 8, I mean, really just bouncing right back to week 1 and week 2 Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield especially just absolutely locked in, throwing missiles all day long. Got back to extending some plays on 3rd downs, playing like what I said in the first 2 weeks. Baker Mayfield is playing like an elite quarterback. He did it again this week against the Eagles. So that's just a huge, huge deal. They seem to have found a little bit more of a run game too with Bucky Irving, who looks fantastic and much better than Rachaad White, who catches the ball really well but has never been a good running back. I think I had Rachaad White ranked as my 32nd running back in the league in my deep dive series. Getting a guy to stand out that actually has vision and contact balance is just another wrinkle to this offense. Trey Palmer made a big, tough catch. I like Trey Palmer. They don't need much from him, but if he can give them a little something extra too on top of Godwin and Evans, who continue to ball out, really like what we're seeing there. Love the play calling as well with Liam Cohen. And the Bucs defense doing their thing, right? We kind of know what this Todd Bowles defense is. Great to get Vita Vea back. And these young players in the secondary, too, a couple of draft crushes of mine, Zion McCollum and Tyke Smith. Really fun to see them playing great this year. So very impressed by the Bucs. They feel like, to me, far and away the best team in the NFC South, and a team that I was just dead wrong on. I thought they would kind of go back in the opposite direction. They've only built off of what they accomplished last year, and honestly aren't too far away from climbing up into my top tier here either. But they are going to fall just short there. Let's get to our top tier. These, to me, do feel like deep playoff contenders. And this group, I'll be honest, was very, very tough to rank this week. I think you could order these guys in a wide variety of positions. I went back and forth and up and around on all these guys. And then I just kind of try to take a step back and just ask the age-old question, in a vacuum, neutral stadium, where would I stack these teams up? And I landed on Houston at the bottom of our top tier with the number 7 spot, actually falling down 2 spots. Not that I wasn't impressed by them this week. I was just more impressed by other teams passing them up a little bit. I will say, I feel like they're still sorting some stuff out on both sides of the ball. They haven't been able to get that run game back since Joe Mixon got hurt. And the defense has actually been just very inconsistent this season. I do feel like Stroud in the passing game are something they can hang their hat on, and is the critical reason they're 3-1 and why they're in our top tier here. But despite the -2, again, I do see this team as a Super Bowl contender and a team that has impressed me this season, especially CJ Stroud, who's just so locked in, so smooth, so methodical, so great out of structure, creating plays when they need it too. And Nico Collins, man, a lot of great receivers in this league, but maybe none playing better than Nico this season. At number 6, this is where I settled for Minnesota at 4-0. Huge, huge win to go into Lambeau. Just continuing to knock off tough teams, man. And, while they kind of let the Packers creep back into this game, maybe a little too close for comfort there, they did a really good job on both sides of the ball early in this game. O'Connell brought it from a play calling perspective. Darnold made the throws he needed to. Justin Jefferson, just a nasty touchdown catch. Jordan Addison getting back into the lineup, winning on a double move that just creates a wide open touchdown for Darnold. The run game playing well. So the offense brought it early to help take that lead. And then the defense, this was probably their least impressive defensive performance, but I do think Flores and these guys caused enough uneasiness early in the game as the Packers kind of felt out this crazy Flores system. I do think the Packers were onto something with like really pushing those hole shots because the Vikings are running a ton of cover 2. So I'm curious to see what the reaction to that is. Because theoretically, if you're showing your entire defense at the line of scrimmage and then dropping into cover 2, you're gonna have some vulnerabilities up the seam and to the sidelines. So I'm curious to see if there's an adjustment to that. But still, obviously, very impressed by what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball. I think 6 is a very respectable ranking for Minnesota. I know Vikings fans are going to want them to be top 3 as they keep rolling here. Honestly, the main holdup there is Sam Darnold actually did not feel great in this game. A lot of turnover-worthy type of mistakes. Takes the strip sack, not sensing the blitz, throws a pick, had another drop pick in there. Couple more missed throws in this game, deep towards the sideline that could have really helped put this game away late. That really is the kind of underlying thing, is like just how legit is Sam Darnold compared to all the other quarterbacks in this top tier. They are unique in that way, right? Where they don't really have that franchise quarterback. So we'll continue to monitor Sam Darnold. That's the only reasoning for like why they aren't top 3. I still like the Darnold project here and believe in it. But I know there's going to be some unhappy Vikings fans with this number 6 ranking, though you guys will have to let me know if it's fair or not. Okay, this next ranking actually might be my most controversial ranking, next to the, putting Atlanta behind New Orleans after just beating them. But I've actually got the Kansas City Chiefs at number 5. I get that they're 4-0. I get that they're the defending champs. This team feels very unstable for me. And they are by far the most defense-dependent team out of this top tier. I think they have quite clearly the worst offense out of this group, and that's not a disrespect to Patrick Mahomes, though he's not playing great. They just don't have dudes to throw to. They really didn't before Rashee Rice goes down for the year, but now that he's gone for the season, I am worried about this thing. I know they got the deep pass in there to Xavier Worthy. That was great to see, but this thing is like about to turn into the Justin Ross, Sky Moore, Justin Watson show with a team that has tackle questions. And again, Patrick Mahomes playing the worst ball of his career. The run game's fine, but again, Isaiah Pacheco missing a ton of time here. They're leaning on Kareem Hunt and Samaje Perine after Carson Steele gets benched for fumbling in this game. Can this team scrap by winning games 20-17, 17-0 against an injury-derailed Chargers team? Yes, absolutely. And I'm still ranking them ahead of some teams I think very highly of. But do I genuinely think they should be favored over our next 4 teams right now, even if they are the 4-0 Chiefs? No, I don't. And we'll only have to wait and see how that ages. They've got the Saints on Monday night this week, then the bye, then it's San Francisco after that. But then I've got the Bills at number 4, dropping down 3 spots. I still think very highly of this team. And I don't want to panic after they lost on what was a really rough night for them. But I do think we saw a couple things. Number 1, while this offense is excellent with their ball control offense, with the run game, when they can kind of control the game script, this has been the best offense in the league for the first 3 weeks. But do they have the explosive pieces to get chunk plays and come from behind when things don't go their way early? As great as Josh Allen is, I would say no. But I do ultimately think the offense is going to be okay. Josh Allen continues to play incredible football. I think if Khalil Shakir doesn't kill a drive with a drop early and Sean McDermott's a little bit smarter with his 4th down punt decisions, this game would have been a lot closer. but I'm not quite willing to just ignore what happened in the first 3 weeks after a rough night in Baltimore on primetime football. Where I am worried about the Bills is I'm right back to questioning some things with this defense. They did impress me last week against Jacksonville, but that was really the only impressive performance on the season was against the Jags. Week 1, Arizona lit them up. Week 2, they had good results, but it was, to me, more self-imposed mistakes by the Dolphins offense if you watch that game. And then in this game against the Ravens, they just felt slow and untalented, which is my fear for this Bills defense. Because let's face it, at linebacker, at safety, some aspects of this defensive line, they are kind of slow and untalented. I know that's not the deepest, most thorough analysis, but sometimes it just comes down to that, man. And they couldn't get to the football. They couldn't wrap up. Really, really back to being worried about if they have the dudes on that side of the ball to stay a dominant football team. A rough week for the Bills, but they were the best team in football for the first 3 weeks. And I don't just forget about that. We're ranking these teams' entire resume for the season, not just week 4. So giving them the opportunity to bounce back here while also penalizing them for an ugly night in Baltimore. But then at number 3, I am going to push the Niners back up. You got to remember, in this series, I will tank teams when injuries really pile up. And the Niners bounced back from injuries much faster than I anticipated. Debo and Kittle, who I thought were going to miss some more time, plugged right back into the lineup. Pair that with a suffocating defensive performance in their first game without Javon Hargrave gives me a little bit more assurance there, even if it was against the Patriots. But it was a reminder, like Nick Bosa, they still have some other dudes, and the secondary, Fred Warner, they still have a great defense, even without a high-end number 2 option on the pass rush. But really, it's how well Brock Purdy's played, how potent I think this offense is, even without Christian McCaffrey, who's probably going to miss a few more months. It doesn't really matter when Jordan Mason is running as hard as he is. Felt to me like the Niners got themselves back on track this week after getting off the rails a little bit, weeks 2 and 3. But then at number 2, the Baltimore Ravens. Not sure anybody's had a better last couple of weeks than Baltimore after an 0-2 start, a collapse against the Raiders. Felt like a team kind of spiraling to find an identity, and boy, did they find it. Thanks, Dallas. The game plan that they put together, specifically, I think, to beat Dallas, I think helped them discover the best identity for this offense, where, look, last year, yeah, they did the pro offense, the spread style thing. Lamar won an MVP. That's all great. But hey, this front office has not done a good job with the offensive line and these weapons to make this a drop back passing team. So it's kind of funny to see them come full circle after that Dallas game plan and seeing how effective it was to just come out with some iteration of a Greg Roman style offense, 12 personnel, 21 personnel, just run the ball, play action teams to death. They're kind of back where they started, but in a different iteration, right? They actually have answers in the passing game that they learned about themselves last year. So it's a healthier version of this offense, but I love that they're leaning back into it. I wasn't sure if that was going to just be a Dallas thing or if they were going to look at it and be like, you know what? Our best players are at tight end, fullback, the dual threat of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, and just lean all the way in. And then on the other side, the defense has really settled in. Love the way this secondary is playing. You know, I think even if they're a little bit worse on the front end with the pass rush and not having the McDonald blitz mastermind of it all, I do think they're better on the back end. Nate Wiggins is sick. You've got these guys healthy and flying around, really suffocating teams over the last couple of weeks. So the Ravens are rolling, but not going to be my number 1 team this week. That's going to be the Detroit Lions. A masterful night, a perfect game from Jared Goff, not an incompletion on the stat sheet. And this was kind of the dream heading into the year with Jamison Williams breaking out, providing that verticality, the perfect combination in the backfield with Gibbs and Montgomery, both fantastic. Amon-Ra didn't even have to do much, but they get the big toe-tapping touchdown from him when they needed it. And Sam Laporta making some big plays, all supporting Jared Goff to play his best game of the year by far. That was the big thing with the Lions, was like the first 3 weeks, Goff had really not played well. A lot of mistakes in there. Week 3, though, it was really just one bad mistake and kind of perfection elsewhere. Now you see what he does here on Monday night, and you feel like he's kind of locked back in, and that's bad news for opposing defenses. Now, I do think you could poke some holes in their defensive performance if you wanted. I think the Lions defense has actually played very well the first 3 weeks, but yeah, in this game, they did get out superstarred by that Seahawks offense for sure. They themselves, especially without Brian Branch out there to kind of contain stuff, really struggled with some of the speed of guys like DK Metcalf and Kenneth Walker. And the pass rush outside of Aiden Hutchinson really wasn't as good as it could have been. So you could poke some holes in the defense for sure after this week, but when the offense is able to roar like this, it is just kind of a different animal. And I didn't mean either of those puns, but it is a fun way to wrap up the Week 5 power rankings. You guys will have to let me know what you think of the rankings this week. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Again, please do hit that like button on the way out. I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and we'll see you later. Peace out.